Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm a software developer based in Baltimore, and in this video, we're going to go over what exactly is Kanban, how it's used on teams, and what makes it effective. Kanban is a framework that teams follow to organize their work. It's an agile process that teams follow to make sure that work can be completed smoothly. So, this means removing any blockers, or places that could potentially slow down a member's ability to complete the task. In doing so, this sets a team up to be agile. To learn more about Agile, we've got a nifty video that covers the principle linked in the description below. So Kanban is pretty much a framework that teams follow, and the core focus is a visual representation that contains all of the work to be done. Now, before we go any further, I want to quickly go over a few roles you'll commonly see on a basic development team. If you already know the different roles, feel free to skip ahead. First up is the product owner, who determines the product's direction. This person identifies what features should be prioritized and how the product should grow based on the business needs the product should address. So, things like feedback from the clients or revenue growth. Next up is the developer. Developers make the magic happen and write the code to build out the features. They'll work with the product owner to determine if the business requirements are realistic and about how long they would take to complete. Alrighty, so we've covered the main roles, and in Kanban, there's a board that's used to visualize the work that needs to be completed. This is what makes transparency possible, since any team member at any given time can look at the board and understand the priorities and where the team stands in achieving its goals. Now, these columns represent the status of the work to be completed. The most basic implementation of the board will have columns to track work that needs to be done, work that is actively being worked on, and work that already is done. There are also other boards that can be more granular with the columns to show things like work that is blocked or work that is no longer relevant. It's really up to the team to decide what works best for them. Each item of work is represented by a card that contains details of the work that is assigned to it. So it'll have information like who's responsible for completing the card, how long it's going to take, and exactly what work is required for the card to be complete. As the project progresses, you'll see each card move between the columns to reflect its updated status. We've gone over how Kanban works, and now we'll dive into the specifics of what makes it effective so that teams can get their work done efficiently. Your team will want to limit the work in progress to avoid biting off more than you can chew. Otherwise, you'll spread yourself thin. If you have too many tasks being worked on at a given time, then they'll move along more slowly than if you were to take them on in smaller chunks. When tasks progress through the board, you'll have a visual representation of their journey through the board. This allows the team to analyze the stages where the tasks are being held the longest and understand what causes them from progressing to the next stage. Ideally, you'll want to refine the process so that the tasks evenly flow from start to finish. This will allow the team to be able to accurately estimate how long tasks will take and communicate to stakeholders when to expect a feature to be ready. The columns on the board also help to unify the flow for the task's life cycles, since every task goes through the same cycle. This helps to align team members' expectations for each stage, since the tasks must meet a certain set of requirements in order to progress into the next stage. Kanban also encourages feedback at any given moment, so when a team finds places where the process can be tweaked for improvement, they can implement those changes immediately. From there, the team will use the board to analyze the task's new lifecycle and determine if the new flow is better or worse than the original flow. But generally, the changes are introduced in small increments so that it's easier to pinpoint what effect the changes have on the flow. There are a lot of great benefits that make Kanban effective and help improve a team's workflow, but there are also some traps that can make it ineffective and lead to team instability. Kanban mainly affects how your work is organized, so it can be pretty seamless to integrate with any existing team setting. Like if you have a team lead or a senior developer, Kanban won't affect their roles or responsibilities. If anything, it actually encourages every team member to be proactive and take initiative to remove blockers to keep the workflow continuous. There's also a lot of flexibility with task management. This is incredibly helpful when the product owner needs to reprioritize the work or introduce new work onto the board. Any new changes shouldn't have any effect on the progress of existing tasks. Kanban's focus on the process, no, not that process, this process, brings the focus on identifying and removing blockers. It helps to move tasks along so that no team member is sitting idle. One downside is that the backlog must always be up to date. This means that the tasks must be prioritized and accurate so that when the team members pick up tasks from the top of the backlog, they're always working on tasks that will be the most valuable to the product. Knowing exactly when a task will be complete can also be kind of difficult to predict, since the workflow is more fluid and there's no clear deadline for the tasks on the board. Each task has its own beginning and ending point. There's also the temptation to expand the scope of tasks beyond what it should be. So you may have a task that is created to tackle problem A, but your team might think, well, we might as well throw in a quick fix for problem B since they're related. Now, this ties problem B together with problem A. So if you encountered a roadblock that was only related to problem A, then problem B is also blocked. You'll often see Kanban compared to Scrum, which is another Agile methodology. If you're unfamiliar with Scrum, you should check out our video linked in the description below. Now, Scrum has a lot of ceremonies and structure built in that makes it a bit more rigid to follow. There's also a time-restricted sprint in which a set amount of work must be completed in a set amount of time. However, this means that during the sprint, there are restrictions on the work to be scheduled, and the product progresses in increments. Whereas in Kanban, the workflow is continuous, so the product continuously evolves. Scrum also makes the assumption that all of the work a team has should be completed by members within the team, whereas the work on a Kanban board can be completed by anyone from any team. Kanban also differs from Scrum in that there's more emphasis on the board and the team's workflow. There's also much less structure than Scrum, so there aren't as many roles and ceremonies that the team needs to follow to get everyone aligned on the same page. It also puts more focus on moving the tasks along in a workflow rather than having a deadline to complete a set amount of tasks. You'll also see this process accommodate small incremental changes more easily and quickly than Scrum does, particularly since it's easier to analyze the impact it has on the task's lifecycle through the workflow. All in all, I wouldn't say that one way is better than the other. Every team has a unique dynamic, and the nature of the project may also vary, so things that work well in one team might not work as well for another. That doesn't necessarily mean that a team must pick one over the other, but rather teams can merge the two together and use parts that will work best for their situation. You can also get a variation of the two where you merge together the structure from Scrum and retain the visualization of Kanban, also known as Scrumban. Scrumban. Scrumbun? I don't know, pronounce it however you want. I've been on a team where we started out using Scrum, but Scrum had a lot more structure than we really needed. So we stripped out a bunch of the unnecessary ceremonies and integrated Kanban principles so that we could put more focus on the work. But it's largely dependent on your team's dynamics and project. If I were on a different team of the same size, a completely different approach might be necessary instead. I really hope you found this video helpful, and thank you so much for watching. Please join the conversation by dropping a comment below and subscribing to this channel. And if you're ready to take your skills to the next level, you can start learning on Codecademy today.